911, what's your emergency?
The following content is graphic, emotional, and includes dark humor that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised. These stories are based on real-life EMS, military, and healthcare experiences. Calls are real, providers are real, names and details have been changed to protect privacy. They may be disturbing to some and are definitely inappropriate for HR department. Any medical or mental health discussion is personal experience, not protocol. Use your damn brain. Follow your local guidelines, and when in doubt, call med control. If you're struggling, don't do it alone. Talk to someone, a coworker, a friend, a therapist, or hell, reach out to me. I'll answer. Need help right now? Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. Okay, you're listening to Dispatched and Dysfunctional, where chaos has a pulse and compassion sometimes comes with a cost. Today's guest has seen both sides of that cost. Dr. Joe Sherman is a pediatrician, coach, and speaker who spent decades in medicine before realizing the white coat wasn't armor, it was weight. He's now dedicated to helping clinicians, first responders, and caregivers rediscover their joy and their purpose in their work, not by ignoring burnout, but by confronting it head on.
Thank you so much. I
Dr.
appreciate
Sherman,
being
welcome to
here,
the
Chris.
show. It's lovely to have you. I always tell the bios for everybody, and of course, no one tells the story better than themselves. So, for the listeners meeting you for the first time today, who is Dr. Sherman, and what is the one thing you want them to take away from this conversation?
I am, wow, who is Dr. Sherman? It's a multifaceted question. I would say I am first and foremost an accompanier of health professionals. And I do that through coaching individually, one-on-one, working with healthcare teams, multidisciplinary teams. I do it also in bringing individual health professionals together for retreats and times for restoration and reflection. That's who I am now, along with being a husband and a father, a dog and cat owner, a brother, an uncle, and all the rest of the duties that go along with that. And I'm also a pediatrician. I feel like I've been a pediatrician for 38 years or more, and I'll always be a pediatrician in my heart, whether I am practicing clinically presently or not.
Yes, I understand that, and that
Yeah.
makes sense. And that's a lot of hats. So imagine spending your life learning how to keep people alive, only to realize somewhere along the line you forgot how to live yourself. The pager never stops, the weight never lifts, and every time you think you've reached empty, someone needs you again. That's where Joe's story and his mission begins. Joe, you've said you've burned out from doing exactly what you were trained to do.
Well,
what did
in
that
retrospect,
realization
I
look
feel
like?
I reached burnout several times. Some of it was unrecognized and some of it was recognized. I would say the ultimate time, I've always worked as a pediatrician, both in the US as well as abroad. I worked and lived in Uganda for 2 years, and
Oh, wow.
and in Bolivia for 4 years. In Uganda, it was with just my wife and myself, and in Bolivia, it was with our whole family, my two young kids and my wife, as well as here in the U.S., primarily in Washington, D.C., and also in Seattle, Washington, Tacoma, Washington also. So I've moved around and been in different places. And in each of those jobs that I've had in all of those places, I wore several hats. And most of that was because I love teaching. I love the counseling that goes along with being a pediatrician and a physician. And I love getting to know people at a deeper level than just the superficial level. And I would say the ultimate episode of burnout occurred after I returned from living in Bolivia, where my family we were serving as missioners in a rural area of Bolivia. And all of us were wearing different hats. My kids were young. They were 3 and 5 years old when we got there. And we were living in an area where there were no other gringos. We were the only non-Bolivian folks in our area. And so our kids went to a Bolivian school, and we lived in a community of other families, Bolivian families, mostly indigenous Quechua people of the Andes of South America. And then after living there and working there, doing
Wow.
several different things and living a life that was much more expansive, open, not that stressful from a job perspective. Um, and then returning back to the US and having that mentality that was built inside of me before I ever became a doctor, which was achieve the best, be at the top, do whatever you can for other people at all costs, and provide for your family. So I hit the ground running, looking desperately to find a job and re-enter into US culture, US medical culture, trying to catch up on anything I was behind on in the medical world. And I landed eventually with a job as a medical director of a county hospital, big hospital that was serving a pretty high risk population within the city of Seattle. And I loved the job. I
Oh,
loved
wow.
the population. I loved the people I was working with. The only issue was that what I was bringing to that job, which was a give everything of yourself to fix and improve everything, regardless of whether you have control over it or whether it's your job or not. That's the mentality I bring in. It's kind of like if I look at people that I'm working with around me and the job is difficult for them, then I take it upon myself to try to make it better. And that's I think it's a noble thing to do, and
That's
I feel like I would always try to do that. But in retrospect, I would try to do it a little bit more collaboratively. I would do it more humbly and with a lot more self-compassion as I try to do it.
gotcha. That would be very stressful in the end, especially on yourself and that having that mentality. And that actually brings me to another question: is when you talk about the culture of overgiving in
Well,
medicine, what
I
do you mean by that?
believe that all people who enter into helping professions in general, but especially into healthcare, whether that be as you enter medical school or you enter any nursing school as a medical social worker, as a first responder, as whatever it is, that there is a certain part of us that very nobly wants to be of service to other people, wants to help. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's the truth. And also, many of us bring in those beliefs that we have been raised on, which often are beliefs of self sacrifice, beliefs of putting others first before yourself, also beliefs of that if you keep working hard enough, then you will achieve, you'll get to where you want to get. And you do that sometimes at the cost of your own well being.
I agree with you 100% on that. I think that's actually, like you said, all healthcare and any helping field, as you said, because you get into the field to help people, and it may sound cliche, like you said, but at the same time, why else do we do what we do if we weren't here to help people? That, and it does take a toll on all of us, and we don't really realize it a lot of the times. And that's a lot of us. We let the jobs become our identity. So how do we separate ourselves from the job and create our own
Yeah, I think
identity
the first step
in the end?
to me is just realizing this and accepting that it's true. Now, I'm generalizing. There are many people that, especially I think today, I see younger people coming into medicine. I mostly work with physicians, so but I also work with medical teams, and it expands to all health professionals. But I would say that recently there is a shift and a trend toward a more balanced life. And I think that that shift has come because of the society has shifted. It was in the old days. I grew up as a kid when we had our old black and white TV, and then later got our first color TV. I remember that. Long before computers, internet, cell phones, all that. Believe me, there was a world back then. Um,
Right.
and it was kind of like watching Marcus Welby, MD, on TV, and that philosophy, that culture where a physician was everything to people. Everyone looked up to that physician. The physician had the status of being this kind of adored member of society that was helping everyone and was giving of usually himself to be of service to the community. And then everyone, including the family of that physician, would try to work around that person to try to take care of the rest of life for that person, so that truly that individual was given the freedom and the privilege of being able to focus primarily on the job and not do anything else. As time has gone on, life has become a lot more complicated. Communication and technology and all kinds of advancement has occurred. There has been an explosion in society of equality of everyone. Physicians are now predominantly, as you see, people in medical school and residency and beyond, predominantly women. And so there is a shift in society where there is a sharing of duties of all people who are in families and relationships. And society is looking at people as more well rounded. And I think that that is something that is desperately needed and is a good thing. The problem is that many of us were raised in a culture in our medical training and all of that training to still instill that kind of self-sacrifice, put the patient first, give of yourself at all costs, and trying to balance that with trying to also live a life that is beyond the white coat, that is beyond the uniform that you wear on the street. If you are riding around in an ambulance, so you I believe that we need to have some type of realization that there is a difference, there is a separation, that there is a part of us that is that first responder, that is that physician, that is that nurse. And then there's a part of us that's the wife, the husband, the parent, the child, the son, the daughter, the coach, the whatever it is, and to be able to develop the skills that establish boundaries within ourselves as well as structurally around us that allow us to separate those two parts of us that exist.
I gotcha. That okay. I love it. Actually, that makes a lot of sense and very well put as well. Very insightful. So you left clinical practice for a while to focus on reflection and coaching. How did stepping
Yeah, I
away change your
think
perspective on
for
medicine?
me in particular, like I said, that final episode of Burnout uh, was one of many because I switched jobs. I've never had one medical job for more than 5 years. So I was never one to kind of get into a position and then work my way up in some way or try to climb the ladder in some way. That was just because that was my life circumstance. Other people are different, and I have no judgment one way or the other. I happened to find a life partner who had similar interests in traveling in the world and living in different cultures. And so that worked out for me. But each time I look back at each of those jobs, I had gotten to a point where I was kind of ready to move on and ready to hand off whatever job I had as a medical director or clinic director, whatever it was, to someone else. Um, but I believe in this final step, as I was trying my hardest to respond to the need by working harder and working harder instead of stepping back and really looking at the situation from a broader perspective. My philosophy and what I see in many of my physician clients, especially, is the situation doesn't look good. Maybe if I work harder, it'll get better. Um, that just leads to burnout, exhaustion, anxiety, depression. And that's what happened to me. I stepped away because I had to. I was getting help from mental health professionals, and it became a situation where it was either I voluntarily stepped away or my psychiatrist was going to require me to step away. So, along with the support of my wife, I did step away, and as a result, was able to wrestle with that identity that was fully invested in being the doctor and start to rediscover all about myself that wasn't specifically the doctor. And I started to realize that being a physician, being a pediatrician, was a vehicle for me to express my values and my gifts that I wanted to bring to the world, which were more along the lines of accompaniment and counseling and teaching and facilitating discussion and relationships between people. When that was present in my job as a physician, I thrived. When that was excluded from my job as a physician, and I just became part of the assembly line to just try to fix people, hand out prescriptions, and move along, then I sunk down into the depths. I was able to realize that with the help of other professionals that were in the mental health and coaching world. And that really helped me discover where I could fit in much more intentionally in medicine. And I wanted to do the same thing for other people, both as a retreat facilitator and a coach, coaching one-on-one with health professionals.
That's awesome. So you talk about rewriting the
Hmm,
story of burnout. What does
that's a
that look
great
like in real
question.
life?
I think it's different for each person. And I believe that it starts, number one, like I say, by realizing that somehow, some way, things are not working out well. And then it involves the next step, which is getting help, reaching out to someone that can give you perhaps an external perspective on what's happening. That can be a coach, a therapist, it can be a life partner or good friend, but you have to be careful because the people that are really close to you sometimes they're too caught up in being personally involved with trying to help you that they may not be able to give you as much of an objective approach and view as you need. That help hopefully will help you get more in touch with your core values, why it is that you entered the field that you did in the first place, where it is that perhaps you diverted from that path, mostly because of external influences, which mostly it has to do with supervisors or mentors that felt like they knew the best path for you instead of you understanding from your own heart and self what was the best path. And then using those values and that reflection to then understand the direction that you truly want to go into, the direction you want to take. And it could be right where you are, exactly where you are right now, but with a different attitude, a different mindset, as well as some self advocacy to do more of what you really love and less of what is really bringing you down. It could mean that you belong somewhere else in a different setting completely. And that can be difficult, but it can take courage to step away and try to do something different. But if it leads to something that's more congruent with who you are, it's well worth it.
Very well said. That makes a lot of sense. You have to learn yourself from others, and of course, like you said a minute ago, from your inside of your old self. And I talked to someone before. They said, make a list of if you're having doubts, make a list. You know, um, and so you coach healthcare professionals now. So what's the first myth that you always have to break
I
for
think the
them?
first myth is that somehow reaching out for help is a sign of weakness. I'm not sure. I didn't go through training as EMT, paramedic, first responder of any nature. I went through training as a physician, and I can tell you that we are given either directly or indirectly the message that you should be able to handle any situation. And if you are having to look for someone else to do it for you or to get help, then that is a sign of weakness. That may not be stated directly, but believe me, that is the indirect message we get. So the first myth I have to overcome is that
Same here.
seeking help from someone is a sign of weakness.
Yeah, we get the same thing as you said. It's not always directly said, but there are the innuendos and the you know synopsises, I should say, of not going to anybody for help. Actually, when I first got into EMS, I was told that if you need help, you don't need to be in this field, and that was one thing that made me want to change my mind. I was like, wait, what? How does that work? So and that brings me back to this question here: is you've said compassion fatigue isn't cured
Hmm.
by rest
I
alone.
think that
What else has to
even the
shift?
term compassion fatigue, I think, is a misnomer. And this is something I've learned recently. I think that what people term as compassion fatigue is actually empathy fatigue. And the difference between that is, for me, true compassion means seeing someone's suffering or someone feeling hurt, being injured, being sick, whatever it might be. Empathy is the first step, and empathy means to actually see that suffering and take it on yourself, is actually to experience that suffering yourself. Many of us do that. Some of us are termed or can be labeled as empaths. And those of us who are empaths take that into ourselves to where it actually inhibits our ability to help someone else. So being able to see someone else's suffering and feel it, and not so much feel it like you are in their feet, in their shoes, but to actually realize that they're suffering, acknowledge it, and acknowledge it to yourself and to them and say, ow, that hurts. I'm so sorry you're suffering. I want to also do something about it. I would like to help you in some way. So the compassion is seeing the suffering and having the desire to be of help to the other person. Compassion also means that in order to do that, we ourselves have to take care of ourselves. We ourselves have to have compassion for ourselves. So if I see someone suffering, my first step is to recognize, ooh, they're suffering. Wow, I'm feeling that. And that takes some care for myself as well as the other person. So let me kind of realize the impact that that has on me and do whatever I need to take care of myself while I'm taking care of the other person. And then that frees me up and lets me be fully attentive to the other person. So empathy fatigue comes from where you take on all the suffering of everyone you meet, each person, time after time after time. It builds up because you're not doing anything about it, its impact on yourself. You're not being able to have compassion for yourself while you have compassion for the other person. And there's nothing to do with it. That just builds up more and more and more until it leads to physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional breakdown.
Perfect. That again makes a lot of sense. So you now coach doctors, nurses, and responders. What's one pattern you see over and over again across each and every role?
One pattern. I see many different patterns. I would say
Is there that
one
many?
pattern that I see of people that come to me is this um, idea that um, is what I call, well, I don't call it this, it's been termed this by many other people, is the second dagger, that second sword. And what that means is I realize I'm not meeting my own expectations. Like I see myself as being uh, unworthy in some way. And then the second dagger is I hate myself for feeling this way. So not only are you feeling and suffering from this sense that you are unable to fix everything, but secondly, you don't like yourself because of it. And this leads to shame. This leads to avoidance. It leads to anxiety, depression, and more mental illness. So I think that pattern of kind of beating ourselves up for being human and having human responses to suffering, our own suffering as well as other people's, instead of having a compassionate response to say, wow, this is really hard. I'm feeling like I should have done a better job. I'm feeling like I missed something there. And then having a response of, you know, that's human. That's part of being human. We can't all be perfect all the time. And so everybody feels that way sometime. We can't be super people. So let me have some compassion for myself and give myself a break this time. And then try to do the best I can to try to understand my limitations as I move forward and trying to help other people. So I think it's that sense of self-compassion um, that people have a challenging time to grasp.
I gotcha. And then you said healing requires safe spaces for truth. How do you build
Yeah,
that
I
defense
will.
systems that
I'll give
push
you some
vulnerability?
examples. I think because I've been speaking in very flowery philosophical language here. Um, uh, a client will come to me sometimes referred by their employer. It could be a physician who is falling behind in their administrative duties of charting and keeping up with their in basket and answering all their messages or something like that. It could be a surgeon who just reached their limit in the operating room or working with people and just blew up and just started getting angry and yelling or cursing at people. And then they get referred for coaching. It's like kind of remedial coaching, which, to be honest with you, I hate that term. And I don't like it when people get referred to me for that. And I used to avoid it, but I don't anymore because I believe that all of those people, regardless of why they were referred to me for coaching, there's something going on underneath the behavior. There's something going on underneath that outburst or underneath that falling behind by 200, 300 charts that you haven't completed in the clinic or whatever it might be. That person is suffering. That person's hurting in some way. So for me as a coach, my first step is to try to gain the trust of that client. And that means listening to that client, listening to their side of the story from A to Z, not posing any judgment upon them, making sure that they realize that they are my first and foremost priority, not the company that hired them. And try to understand what it is that's going on behind the scenes, that the behavior was just one step, one final straw that broke the camel's back. And that's really the first step of what I try to do.
Yes, sir. I got it. So, if a responder or clinician listening right now feels like they're stuck in survival mode, what's the first micro step
I would
towards
say the
change?
first step is to have the courage to reach out for help, recognize what's happening and reach out for help. And I think that is, and that help can come from just telling a colleague that, I'm hurting. I'm struggling right now. And then having that colleague be able to, now, if the colleague goes, "Oh, come on, bud, you'll be okay. Hang in there. You're doing a great job." That's not the right person to talk to. But if someone goes, "Oh, okay, well, all right, good luck." That's not the right person to talk to. It's the person that responds by saying, "Wow, I know what you're talking about. I've been there. And I can tell you someone that I went to for help, whether that be a therapist, whether it be a coach, whether it be someone who is part of the organization that is part of the structure of support for the organization, whoever it is. But having the courage to admit that you're struggling, which is human, we all struggle, and then trying to follow through and find the right person for you to accompany you through that journey.
Perfect. And then you said joy isn't something you find, it's something you rebuild. How does
Wow,
that
I said
process
that. I
start?
have to watch out for my quotes. Let's see. Uh, I think this gets back to how the systems that form us, the systems that are created to train us into our professional lives, um, are built in a way, intentionally or unintentionally, to kind of strip us of our identities that we come in with, and impose upon us a new identity. There is nothing wrong with learning new skills. We have to learn new skills. We have to learn methods of resilience, of dealing with adversity. That's all necessary for being a part of what we do. However, I would also say that something that's extremely important is that we go back to understand, what is it that brought us joy? What is that moment in our lives where we felt that this is a place where I would love to stay forever? Or if it's over, I can't wait to go back and do that same activity with those same people at that same place, whatever it was. If we can get in touch with those types of experiences that brought us joy, that helped us to feel like we were ourselves to our fullest, we can extract the elements and all of the factors involved with that experience and be able to apply it to our lives in the present moment and move forward in that direction.
Perfectly said. So, what does joy look like now for you compared to when you were
I
still
can
in the
tell
hospital
you,
every day?
near the end of, now when I had this major burnout episode, I took some time off to recover and and understand a little bit more about what truly motivated me about being a doctor. I returned to work part time as a pediatrician and later as a health director of a family shelter system in the city of Seattle. And I embraced those jobs with a new outlook, more of a sense of balance than I did before. So I was able to return with this new attitude that I wasn't doing this alone, that I was doing this with a group of people who I could recognize can share the burden with me. And being able to embrace a job along with other people and recognize the talents of other people and allow them to live their full lives express their full gifts in that job, that brings me joy. The other thing that brings me joy now is to accompany other health professionals to be able to discover what it is presently in their jobs now that brings them joy and try to expand that experience more in their present work. What also brings me joy is to bring together a medical team or a group of health professionals and have them share their experiences and stories with one another and have that resonate with each other and then support each other in having compassion for themselves and each other. All of that brings me joy.
I think that'd bring a lot of people joy. All those. That's amazing, and it's amazing you still doing the coaching and you enjoy doing that, and it does bring you joy to this day. So for someone listening who's afraid to admit how bad
I
it's
would say
gotten,
you're human.
what would you want to say to
You're
them?
human, and join the human race like the rest of us, and um, and do what you can to build up the courage to ask for help, because I can tell you that it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage, and it's a sign of resilience, because if you don't do it, where do you see the future leading? You need to get the help, and that help is not going to have negative implications in your life. The negative implications are going to be when you don't ask for help. So um, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to other people that are around you that you believe are supportive and have a listening ear. But get the help that you need.
Yes, sir. So one last question: what's one lesson your patients have taught you about grace or resilience?
That's a great question. Wow. I would say it's compassion. I keep coming back to compassion. As a pediatrician, I worked with many families with children that had very complex medical conditions. Many families that were struggling themselves financially because the predominant population that I worked with were people who were living on the margin of society, either in poverty or immigrants and refugees. And when they had a child, say with severe autism or with a complex medical condition due to prematurity or from some medical illness or injury, and I saw the courage and compassion that they had for their children. And then for me, I was able to then learn that sense of compassion to have for both myself as well as those parents and those families.
So you actually
Yes.
learn compassion from them by compassion. That's amazing. I bet that was hard as all get out too on you and your wife doing the
Yeah.
traveling and
It was
treating
difficult.
patients like that. So that was Dr. Sherman, pediatrician, coach, and living proof that purpose don't die when the pager stops. It just changes form. Joe, where can
Sure. You
listeners
can
find and connect with
find me
you or your
online. I
work?
have a website. Just if you search joeshermanmd.com, you should come across my website, or you can email me directly at joe@joeshermanmd.com.
And before we close, what's the one message you want every responder, nurse, or doctor to walk away with
That
from this episode?
if you're hurting, if you're struggling, if you are having a challenging time walking in to your shift each day, then that means that you're human. That means that you are recognizing that you have limitations, as we all do. And please, please reach out to someone who is willing to listen and have compassion and help you find the help you need.
Amen to that. And that's very well said as well. End this recording. If you think it's too heavy to say it anyway. It beats a eulogy. You don't have to apologize for surviving however you can. You're not the reason things are heavy. You're the reason they're still moving. Need support right now? Reach out to me. Reach out to somebody. Text or call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org. You're not alone. Not in this job. Not in this fight. Want to share your story or connect? Visit critical-run.com or message the Facebook page, Dispatched and Dysfunctional. We're building this for you, for them, for all of us.